Welcome. My name's Gary Coburn, and I'm back with extendingclouds.com to bring you another edition of education and walkthrough utilizing vRealize Automation and vRealize Orchestrator to provide a better class of service for your end users. In today's session, we're going to dive a little bit deeper and give you a few more things that you can configure and edit on your own, but at the end of the day, should provide a better user experience for anyone that accesses your portal and puts in these requests. So at the end of the day, what I continue to hear from many customers is the questions on my IaaS form aren't exactly what I want to present to my customer. So the example, as we'll look at for a standard OS, is they come in and say, I want CentOS, and I give a description, and I give a request, and I talk about how many lease days and the number of deployments, and then I go in and say, here's how many instances, virtual machines I want, here's how many CPUs I want, how much memory, disk, blah, 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 blah. So what I hear repeatedly from customers is, I don't necessarily want to provide them with any of this form. I would much prefer a simple form that provides them with operating system, size, environment, days, and number of servers. So at the end of the day, what you really provide yourself is a very simple form that your consumers can go in and say, hey, I need a Windows or a Linux VM, for example. I need a size of a virtual machine or cloud machine that is small, medium, large, extra large examples. Environment, I want test, dev, QA, prod kind of examples. And I need it for so many days, and I need this many servers. So really what this comes back to is really giving a user experience and a control that you provide as the cloud administrator. So that prompts the question, how did I actually go through this? Let's dive right in, and we will create another request form just like that based on a workflow that you can download. Let's take a look at the workflow. When you import the workflow in, you'll obviously we're maintaining our standard subset, so VMware, SDE, vRealize Automation. XAS request is what you will actually see in your environment when you import this in. And then my actual request process goes through and basically says, hey, based on Linux or Windows, I go pull and print the automated JSON format of the request. And then I go through and I replace within each individual subset of the things that I want to do to that JSON file. I go in and I edit the very specific fields that I want to edit. So in this example, if you look at set lease, what I do is I pull in the JSON data. I set the lease days from if they're either, depending on how your blueprint is set up, if they're set to null or they're set to 1, I replace that with the number of lease days that we pull in from the actual request form. And you can test any of this by running the workflow, and each one of these are just exposed up as an XAS request, which we'll walk through. So you'll see OS, size, environment, requested for, we actually hard code, and then lease days and number of machines. So we go through this, we set the lease, we set the number of machines, we set the size, we set the environment. You can add additional pieces in here. So if you want to do something that sets perhaps let's do something simple like the guest customization, for example. Say, hey, I have a very specific one for different Linux variants or different Windows variants. When you prompt in, you can go in and use this and just copy the set lease and do the replace of that actual component within your script. So anything that you wanted to build out, you set an input for, you update the pieces and parts, and then you dump it back out, and it will work its way down to actually submit the request. So if you look, the request just pulls the JSON data, plugs in the description, the reason, the requested for, and dumps it right out into a catalog item provisioning request. Pretty simple. Now you'll also see that my template selection, catalog item Linux, catalog item Windows, I've already got those configured as configuration items. And to quickly run through, you can run the install and say, hey, I want to, the configure template, hey, I want to go in and use Photon OS, for example, for my Linux distro, and for my Windows template, I want to take advantage of Windows 2008 or 2012, whatever you may have. This will update the configuration. If you want to evaluate that, you can go in and look at your configuration elements. Same folder structure. X as request. You can see the attributes are Windows 2008 and my Photon OS. So pretty simple to consume, pretty simple to use. All of that goes through and defines the characteristics of the X as request that you want to pull in. Now we can go back and create our X as blueprint. So you go to your design, we choose our workflow, now for our blueprint form, we'll do a heading of request. We'll set this as a drop-down. Default value we'll set to Linux, for example. We'll define our hard-coded values. Required, yes, it's required. We won't set a value. We won't set minimum or maximum lengths. Size. This actually equates back to our sizing. So for the sake of demonstration, I'll quickly show you the size options. So set size. You'll notice that I have medium, large, X large, and small, which doesn't change the template at all. These are all different pieces that you can change in your environment to meet your needs. Go back there. We'll set the default value as small. So we'll do small, medium, large. It is case sensitive, so if you try to do a value of something different, it will choose small by default. We need that to be required. Environment, exactly the same. So I've defined my environments as test, prod, dev, and QA, for example. These are all, so you'll see the test, dev, QA, prod is the different examples. If for some reason your blueprint has one of the other ones, you can take advantage of replacing exactly the components you need. If it's null, it replaces those with the specific environment variables. Again, these tie directly to the reservation policy in my example. So if you guys were looking to do this in a different way, you may wipe this out altogether and say, I don't want to request environment, or I want to use storage reservation policy, or I want to do this reservation policy, and those you would change to whatever your reservation policy names are. So when I get done with this, we can illustrate those, but the default value is going to be test. Going to be a drop down. Required values. Test. Test. Dev. Dev. QA. QA. Prod and prod. Now we go through the requested for, and we'll set the required as, actually, no. We'll set the value as a field. We'll go to request info, requested by, and email. And we will make that so that it is not visible. And you'll notice that it fills in the different components. So when it actually puts the request in, it will do that. Least days is a decimal field. The default value we're going to set to 1. I personally, as you could tell, like the idea of a slider field, just to make it unique for the customer and a little more usable. Required, yes. Minimum value, we'll say 1. Max incremental value we'll set 1, so it can only go up by days per lease, and we'll set a maximum value of 10 days. Number of machines, do the exact same thing in my opinion. Slider field, default value is that I want 1. Required, yes. Minimum value of 1. Maximum value of 10. Increment by 1s. And we can change it so that the label is more readable. How many machines? There's no actual provisioning resource because it is a request that goes through. We publish it. We go in and entitle that catalog item. Custom request. We obviously can change the icon, and we'll assign it to IAS templates. Click OK. Now I've got a custom simple request. Linux or Windows. Small, medium, large. Looks like I didn't get the extra large saved in there. Dev, QA, test. Looks like I didn't get the prod saved in there either. Lease days. How many machines? So that is a simple use case for t-shirt sizing, OS selection, workflow that will provide you a simple interface for your consumers to request resources without having to go through the standard request form. Hope this helps. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I look forward to feedback and any additional information that you may have or questions you may have. Thanks very much. Have a great day.